Good morning, children. Hope you are safe at home. Today we will read the lesson The King of the Golden River, Part 2. We have already done the first part. Now let's read the continuation of this lesson. Let's start. Southwest Wind was true to his word. He did not return to Treasure Valley after that night. So in the last part, it ended when the storm destroyed Treasure Valley and the brothers' home. And when they went to the table to see the card of the stranger who had visited them, they saw the name Southwest Wind Esquire. So this Southwest Wind, this stranger, had promised them that he would never return again to their home. And he kept up to his word. He did not return to Treasure Valley after the last night that he seen them. Neither did any other wind. So there was no rain. Nothing grew in Treasure Valley any more. The brothers made no more profits. Along with the southwest winds which bring rain, no other winds ever came to Treasure Valley. And because there was no winds and no clouds, what happened to the rainfall? It stopped. And as you know, all plants require rainwater for growing and for the land to become fertile. But because there was no rainfall, no crops grew in Treasure Valley. The brothers could not make any profit or money. The wicked brothers then began to make money by selling gold. They melted in a furnace the gold articles they had. They mixed a lot of copper in it and sold the mix as pure gold. So these brothers had to look for another choice. They couldn't grow crops anymore because the valley had dried up. So now they started making money by selling gold. They sold the gold which was not pure. They melted the gold in a furnace, which is a large pot where the fire and flames are very high. So gold gets melted. But they used to not make it into pure gold. They mixed a bit of copper in it. And when they used to sell this new gold, they used to lie to people and say, this is pure gold. So again, they made money by cheating people. Again, they made poor Gluck work in a furnace while they spent the money on themselves. And all this hard work, children, of making the gold, they gave this job to Gluck. And what they used to do? Just go and sell the gold, make the money and enjoy that money on themselves. So poor Gluck was made to do all the hard work and he received nothing in return. Soon all the gold in the house was spent. Only one thing was left, a beautiful golden mug that belonged to Gluck. Gluck's uncle had given it to him when he was a baby. Gluck used to drink both milk and water from it. So soon, when they sold all the gold, there was nothing left. Only there was a beautiful golden mug that was Gluck's mug. One of his uncles had given it to him when he was a small baby. And he loved that mug. He used to drink his milk and water both using this mug. So this mug was very precious to him. But it was the only golden thing left with them. A strange bearded face was delicately carved on the mug. So on that mug, there was a face of a man who had a long beard. Gluck was very fond of the mug. He liked this mug very much. He did not want to part with it. Means he did not want to give it away. But his wicked brothers only laughed at him and threw the mug in the furnace. So what did his brothers do? They did not listen to him. They laughed at him when they said that he didn't want to give his mug, and then they snatched the mug from him and threw the mug in the furnace. They asked Gluck to pour the gold when the mug was melted and went out on some wicked enterprise. Wicked enterprise means some wicked job. So they told Gluck, once the mug gets melted, pour the gold. And they left. So Gluck's favorite mug was thrown in the furnace and the brothers were ready to sell this gold. Sadly, Gluck sat down to watch over the mug being melted. But strangely, after some time, he began to hear a voice singing from the furnace. So Gluck was sitting in front of the fire of the furnace and watching the mug being melted with the fire. But after some time, he could hear a voice singing a song from that fire. He lifted the lid of the crucible, and what did he see? So he lifted the lid of the bowl in which the mug was kept, and what did he see? The face of his old bearded friend on top of the melted gold. So he could see his old bearded friend who was there on that mug had come on top, and he could speak. "Come, Gluck, my boy," said the voice from the crucible. "Pour me out. I am too hot." So he told Gluck, "Come on now, I'm become hot and melted. Now pour me out." Gluck was too astonished. Astonished means he was too surprised and shocked. But he listened. He took hold of the crucible and tilted it to pour the gold. Instead of gold, a golden dwarf came out of the pot. His was the face carved on Gluck's mug. So when Gluck took the crucible and he started pouring out the gold, instead of gold flowing out, a golden dwarf came out. And who was this golden dwarf? The same bearded face that was carved on Gluck's mug. Dwarf means a very short person. "Pray, sir," said Gluck, rather hesitatingly, "were you my mug?" So Gluck was first scared to talk to him, and quietly he asked him, "Sir, were you my mug?" "I am the king of what you call the Golden River," the golden dwarf told him. He added that another stronger king had turned him into a mug by magic. Gluck had freed him from that enchantment. Enchantment means when someone casts a spell, a magical spell. So who was this bearded man? He was once upon a time the king of this golden river. But another mean wicked king who was stronger than him cast a spell on him and turned him into a mug. Gluck, by heating the golden mug, had made him free from this spell. The golden dwarf went on to say that he had seen how kind Gluck was and how wicked and cruel his brothers were. Then he told Gluck a secret. So this golden dwarf told Gluck that he knows that Gluck was a very kind-hearted boy and his brothers were very mean, wicked and cruel. And now he told Gluck a very big secret. Let's see what's that secret. If anyone poured 3 drops of holy water into the river where it started on the mountain top, the river would turn to gold for that person. A person could try this only once. And if anyone put unholy water in the river, he would be turned into a black stone. So saying, the dwarf jumped back into the furnace and disappeared. So what was this little secret? It was again a magic. What was going to happen? If any person poured 3 drops of holy water into the river at the starting point on the mountain top, the river would turn to gold for that person. So that person would get so much of gold. But you can try this only once. And if any person put unholy water in the river, that person would be turned into a black stone. So this was the magical spell that the dwarf told Gluck. And telling him this little secret, he disappeared back into the furnace. When Gluck told this to his brothers, they did not believe him at first and beat him. But Gluck stuck to his story. So, at last they believed him and began to fight over who should have the first chance to go to the Golden River. They fought so much that the police came to see what had happened. So when Gluck told his brothers this magical secret, first they didn't believe him and started hitting him. But when Gluck started insisting that what he's saying is true, then they believed him. And then they started fighting who should be the first person to go and try this magical spell. They were fighting so much that the police had come to see what was going on over there. Hans ran away when the police came, but Schwartz was caught and put in prison. So Hans ran away on seeing the police, but the police caught Schwartz and put him in prison. So now Gluck was left all alone at home. Hans was happy that Schwartz was in prison. The very next morning he went to the church, stole some holy water and set off for the mountain. So Hans was a selfish brother, so he knew Gluck could do nothing and he was happy that Schwartz was in prison. So now he would be the first person to try this magic spell. So the next morning itself, he went to the church. He stole some holy water from the pot in the church and left for the mountain top. It was not easy to climb the mountain. He was tired and thirsty. Soon Hans thought he would drink some of the holy water himself. So this mountain top was very steep and it was a very long climb. Hans got very tired and thirsty. So he thought he would drink some of this holy water to quench his thirst. Just as Hans raised the flask of water to his lips, he saw a little puppy on a rock. It looked as if it was dying of thirst. Hans only pushed the animal away with his foot, drank some water himself and passed on. So as you can see in the picture, when he was climbing up and when he was going to drink some water from that flask, he saw a little puppy and that puppy was looking very tired and he was thirsty. But Hans, instead of helping the puppy, kicked the puppy with his foot and himself drank some water and started climbing back the mountain. The climb now became more difficult. Hans felt thirsty again. He was going to drink some more of the water when he saw a little child on a rock ahead of him. The child was lying lifeless, its lips parched and burning. Ignoring the child, Hans drank some water himself and passed on. So first he kicked the puppy away, drank some water and started climbing again. As he climbed further and got tired again, he felt thirsty again. Now he was going to drink some more water. But when he was going to drink the water, he saw a little child lying on the rock. The child was lying lifeless. He had fallen down, and his lips were parched, means dried, and burning. So this child required water for him to wake up. But Hans ignored this little child, drank water himself from the flask, and again started the climb. So, along with the puppy, he also left that child to die. The climb had now become very difficult. Somehow, Hans reached the top of the mountain from where the golden river sprang. A faint cry fell on his ears. Then he saw a weak old man stretched on a rock. "Water," the man said. "Water, I am dying." Hans started climbing further after drinking water. Now somehow he had reached the top of the mountain where the river started. Suddenly he heard a man crying. He looked back and saw there was a very weak old man sleeping on a rock. And what was this man crying for? Water. He was so thirsty that he was literally dying. So he asked Hans to give him some water. What did Hans do? Let us see. "I have no water for you," replied Hans. He jumped over the old man's body and ran to the river. The sun was about to set. The river shone golden in the light of the setting sun. Hans threw the flask of holy water into the river. But alas, the river did not turn to gold. Instead, there was only a black stone where Hans stood. So when Hans saw this weak old man crying for water, Hans told him, "I have no water to give you." And he left that man to die again. Then he jumped to the top of the river. The sun was about to set and the river was shining with the sun's rays. Hans threw this flask of holy water into the river and he was waiting for the river to turn to gold. But unfortunately, nothing happened to the river. Instead, the stone on which Hans stood turned into a black stone. When Schwartz returned from prison, he took some of Gluck's money and brought some holy water from a bad priest and set out for the Golden River. So as we seen, Hans was not able to cast the magic spell. Now it was the turn of the next bad brother, Schwartz. So when he was left from prison, he took some of Gluck's money and bought some holy water from a bad priest. And he left for the Golden River to do the same thing. While climbing the mountain, Schwartz too saw the fair child dying of thirst and passed on without giving him water. So in the same way, how Hans first seen the child lying over there, even Schwartz seen this child dying of thirst and lying on the ground. But Hans too left him over there and went ahead with his water. As he climbed a little higher, he saw his own brother Hans stretched on a rock, asking for water. But the wicked Schwartz only laughed aloud and went on without giving him any water. So as you can see, this is Schwartz and this is Hans. Hans too was stuck on top of the mountain and he was dying of thirst. When he seen Schwartz, he begged him to give him some water as he was too dying of thirst. But Schwartz, instead of helping his own brother, laughed at him and went ahead to the top of the mountain. Alas, when he cast the flask into the stream, he too was turned to stone. Again, when Schwartz threw the holy water into the river, nothing great happened. Nothing turned to gold. Instead, he was turned to a black stone. Gluck waited and waited for his brothers, but they did not return. At last he decided to visit the Golden River himself. He went to a good priest who willingly gave him some holy water. Gluck waited a long time for both his brothers to return and then to decide who should go to the river. But when they did not return, he decided to do it himself. Now he needed holy water, so he went to a good priest and asked the good priest for some holy water. And this priest willingly gave him holy water. Gluck was young and small, and he too found the climb very difficult. After he had climbed for an hour or so, he became very thirsty. He was about to drink some water when, like his brothers, he saw an old man. So Gluck was a very small boy, so he found it very difficult climbing the top of the mountain. After he had climbed for some time, he got thirsty. Just as he was about to drink holy water, he saw this old man lying, dying of thirst. The old man walked towards Gluck, leaning on a staff, and asked for some water. So this old man walked towards Gluck, and he was walking with a stick. He asked Gluck for some water. Gluck saw that the old man was pale, tired, and thirsty, so he gave him the bottle of water. The old man drank up nearly 2/3 of the water. Then he returned the bottle and wished Gluck well. So when Gluck saw this old man, who was very weak, pale, and tired, as well as very thirsty, he felt sorry for this old man. And without drinking any water himself, he offered him his bottle. The old man drank a lot of the water, and he returned the bottle to Gluck and thanked him for the water. Gluck did not have any water himself, but as he went on, his path became easier. After climbing for a long time, when he became thirsty, he saw the small child. Gluck was sorry for him and gave him some water. The child began to smile, got up and ran down the hill. So Gluck first gave the old man water, and he didn't drink any himself. As he walked further, he came across this little child, again who was very thirsty and pale. Gluck felt sorry for the child too, and he gave him some water. The child drank some water from the bottle, smiled, got up, and ran down the hill. So Gluck helped the old man as well as the pale child. Now only a few drops of water were left in the bottle. When Gluck came close to the mountain top, he was very thirsty himself. Just then, he saw the poor little pup that was dying of thirst. I must help it now, thought Gluck. Otherwise, it may be too late. So he poured the remaining drops into the little dog's mouth. So now, after helping the child, when Gluck started climbing up further, there was very little water left in the bottle. When he reached the top of the mountain, he was very thirsty. Just when he thought he'll drink a little water, he saw the poor little pup that was dying of thirst. He couldn't see this pup. He was a very kind-hearted boy. So he thought to himself, if I don't give this pup any water, it will die. So let me give this water to the pup. And he opened the pup's mouth and poured water into its mouth. So he helped the pup too. The dog sprang up, means the dog jumped up, and in his place stood the king of the golden river. He was very pleased with Gluck. The king put in Gluck's bottle some dew drops from the petals of a lily. Then he told Gluck to cast it into the leaping river. So when Gluck gave this dog water, the dog jumped up, and in place of the dog, who appeared? The same king of the golden river from the mug. He was very happy with what Gluck had done. Then the king put in Gluck's bottle some of the dewdrops from the lily petals, and he told Gluck, now take this water and throw it into the river. Gluck did so, but the river did not turn to gold. However, it changed its course. Changed its course means it changed its direction and began to flow through the treasure valley, making it rich and fertile once again. So, when Gluck threw the water into the river, even then the water did not turn to gold. But what happened? The river changed its path or its way, and now the river started flowing through the treasure valley. So the treasure valley started getting water again. This made the valley rich and fertile again. Gluck lived in the valley, helping the poor and the needy. His barns were always full of corn, and he never looked for money. So what happened? Because the treasure valley became fertile again, Gluck, who used to stay in the treasure valley, could make a lot of money by growing crops. But he always seen that he helped the poor and the needy people living in the valley. And his barns were always full of corn. He never ever was deprived of money. So this magical spell that was there was not real gold as such, but it made Gluck rich and in such a way that he could help all the people around it. So the spell that was cast on Treasure Valley was reversed, and Treasure Valley had come back to its original type. So here, my dear children, what do you learn? That when you do good, good happens to you too. But if you do bad, you can expect the same to happen to you. Now let's see some meanings. Enterprise means any activity or business. Crucible is a container in which something is heated to a high temperature. Tilted moved into a position where one side is higher than the other. Pray means please. Dwarf, an imaginary creature that looks like a small man. Enchantment means effect of magic. Parched means very dry. Staff is a long thick stick. So this was the end of the story of the King of the Golden River. So if you listen to both the stories, part 1 and part 2, you will realize how good happened to the good and bad happened to the bad. I hope you enjoyed this story, children. Thank you and have a nice day.